was someone who wouldn't hear the words no, he wouldn't hear the words it can't be done. He was incredibly single-minded. If he got an idea into his head, then there was no shaking. People could find him impossible to work with. He would drive to have it happen. He would drive to make it work. So, for example, with the iPhone, the idea that he had was that phones were too complicated, that phones were simply a hassle for people trying to work out what all the different buttons did. What he told his designers was, I don't want to have volume buttons, I don't want to have a power button, I just want one button that'll operate it. And they would keep coming back saying, well, we can't do this. And he would send them away, telling them that it had to be done because that's what he wanted.
What serves the customer best is to constantly be working on making things better. We're working on the next iPhone, we're working on the one after that, we're thinking about the one after that. And that's what our customers want us to do. They want to know that when they're ready to upgrade, we're going to have something even better for them. And that's part of what they pay us to do.
Pretty much every product, as I understand it, since he came back to Apple in 1996-97, they missed their ship date because Steve Jobs would insist that things had to be better, that they could be improved. And so the iPhone eventually, when it did appear, did have more than just the one button. But if you held it in your hand, you only saw one button. So that was the sort of thing. He was incredibly single-minded. He was incredibly focused on making something that would work really simply.
If it was nothing but a phone, it would be a breakthrough. You can actually use it and use all of its amazing features because it's really, really easy to use. It's a very powerful phone that's super easy to use.
He said, we've gone through the mouse, we've gone through the scroll wheel on the iPod, and now we're going to be doing touch. And it was like a recap of all the revolutions that Apple, guided by him, had introduced down the years. And although Apple wasn't the first company to do a touch screen, to do a mouse interface, it was the company which actually made it usable, which made people by the million start to think about using it in this way. And that's really the thing where you realize that Steve Jobs could drive what the industry did, that he was the person who could make things happen again and again, that it wasn't just chance that he happened to be at Xerox PARC and that he took up the idea of the mouse, that it wasn't just chance that the iPod had this scroll wheel which meant you could navigate through thousands of songs really quickly. The iPhone was the thing that proved it. And the iPad was the sort of it was like the cherry on top.
I happen to have one right here. That's what it looks like. Very thin. It's just like this.
There's a really key period in Jobs' life when he was thrown out of Apple, when effectively he was booted out by the board because he was trying to overreach as they saw it. He went and set up a company called Next Computer, which he wanted to be a better than Apple thing, and he wanted it to sell computers to education and do even better. At the same time, he got hold of a little company that George Lucas was selling off called Pixar, which was computer animation, which he sort of got as almost as a sort of a job lot. It was just cheap.
To infinity and beyond!
What he learned from Next Computer was that there are some things you really have to do well if you're building hardware. He learned from that about failure. And he incidentally learned from Pixar how you breed success. He turned it into something which created films that people had never seen before. Toy Story was the first completely computer animated feature film, and it had an enormous impact. If you look back over his life, he revolutionized three businesses. There's computers, where they created the first personal computer, and then they had the mouse and so on. He revolutionized the film business because computer animated films just weren't known until he made Pixar into something. And music as well, the whole music business, which was dying on its feet because of Napster in 2000. The creation of iTunes and the iTunes Store in 2003, they only expected to sell 1 million songs from that in the first year, Apple and the record business. And instead they sold 7 million. They sold the first 1 million songs in the first month. So Apple completely changed the face of digital music.
Last week, we sold our 4 billionth song. Isn't that great?
He sort of led this wave and ploughed through the ocean of technology and left all this disturbance in his wake that a lot of people have then picked up on and been able to do things with. I think the legacy that it leaves is one that'll be hard to pick up, of trying to simplify complicated things, but it's something that people would do well to try to follow.